Our meeting, March 19th, 2019, in the Los Gatos Town Council. Ms. Neese, can we get a roll call, please?
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Syak.
Here.
Councilmember Spector.
Here.
Councilmember Rennie.
Here.
Vice Mayor Jensen.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Leonardis.
Here. Leading in our Pledge of Allegiance this evening is one of our teachers from Van Meter School, Ms. Diana Hill. Will you please come up? And I'll share with you a few words about Diana Hill. Come around, all the way around. All the way around. Diana is a 5th grade teacher at Van Meter School. She has been with the Los Gatos Union School District for 11 years. But most importantly, last year, Diane was elected to be the Los Gatos Union School District Teacher of the Year. And I attended the ceremony along with Councilmember Syak. And we're always proud to have one of our local teachers get awarded the Teacher of the Year. So I asked Diana to come in this evening and lead us in the pledge.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
It's truly an honor. Shake everyone's hand.
Sure, absolutely.
Diana, let's get a photo real quick.
Great. Thank you.
And this is for you.
Oh, hey,
You show it off at school.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you.
A round of applause for Miss Diana Hill. All right. Next on our agenda is the Small Business Big Applause Award, and I will hold it up. This is for Nick's Next Door. I love Nick's Next Door. Nick DeFoo has been a wonderful business owner in our business community, and not only is the food great, everything's great. The service is great. The presentation, the giving back to the community. I will say a few words about Nick. Nick, by the way, couldn't be here this evening because he's working. He's always working. He's either hosting or serving or waiting or being the chef. He does everything. And that's what makes these businesses in Los Gatos so special. And Nick is a very special business owner. So I'm just going to say Nick's Next Door, the American Bistro, operated by Chef Nick DeFoo. He's been in the Los Gatos food industry for many years. And he received his training from his what he calls his nanny. I believe that's his mother. He started Nick's on Main in 2008. He moved a block away to College Avenue and became Nick's Next Door in 2012. He's there every night cooking and personally engaging the guests. Of course, all the roles. He plays all the roles. If you haven't had a chance to go to Nick's Next Door, go. It's a wonderful experience. The food is great. And we look forward to many years of Nick's Next Door being in Los Gatos. Thank you very much. We'll give him a round of applause for live television. We have a closed session report.
Yes, good evening. Prior to tonight's regular session, council met in closed session to discuss real property negotiations. The property discussed was the property that the town owns on Tate Avenue and the building known as Forbes Mills. As to both properties, no action was taken that requires reporting under the Brown Act.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is verbal communications. If you would like to speak on any item which is not on the agenda, please fill out one of these cards. And we have one card for Karen Briones. Karen, we're going to fix your microphone.
Is that a little better?
Much better.
All right.
So I'm Karen Briones, and I'm with Safe Routes to School, and I want to thank you for your continued support of our programs, and I'm here to give you a little preview of what we have coming up this spring. On April 14th, it's Spring into Green here in Los Gatos, and we'll be back out this year. This year we're going to be doing helmet fittings and helmet decorating and helping with the Class 4 bike demonstrations, bike lane demonstrations. So come out and see our volunteers. They can really help you out. April 22nd is Earth Day. We always encourage our students to walk or ride in lieu of Earth Day. So consider getting your bike out or your skateboard out. And Zippy's going to make a surprise. Our mascot Zippy is going to make a surprise visit to one of our school sites. May 8th is Bike to School Day here in Los Gatos. Our elementary and middle school are planning events, and at the high school we'll have Bike to Breakfast again. So any high school student that rides their bike that day will be serving probably again a nutritious breakfast of juice and donuts to all of those students. But they do have to ride a bike, so we'll be set up in the bike cage. And again, that's another fun event. It's also a great way to get ready for Bike to Work Day, which is on May 9th. That's the Bay Area Bike to Work Day. If you want to know a little bit more about helmet fitting, visit our website at lgsaferoutes.org. Our helmet educators have made a video about how to fit your helmet and why you should wear your helmet. And then a save the date for August 15th, which is the kickoff. It's back to school with Safe Routes to School. And many of you I know have come out to help greet students on the first day of school. So we'll hoping you'll come out again this year to help greet students and say hello. And that's what we have going this spring and into the fall. And again, thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Briones, for all you do for our community. All right, that closes our verbal communications. We'll move on to our consent calendar. Does any member of council wish to pull an item from the consent calendar? Councilmember Spector.
Pulling number 7.
Pulling number 7, all right. Any other items? Does a member of the public wish to pull anything from our consent calendar? Seeing none, can we get a motion? Vice Mayor.
Move to approve the consent calendar exclusive of number 7.
I'll second that. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. And we'll hear item number 7 after item number 11 on our agenda this evening. All right. Moving on to our public hearings for this evening. Item number 8. We will be discussing our fine and fee schedule for the fiscal year 2019 and 20. And Geeta will be doing our report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Town Council. Geeta Ungvari, your Finance and Budget Manager. The item in front of you is the Town of Los Gatos fiscal year 2019-20 proposed fee and fine schedules. Like most municipalities, the town set fees in accordance with state law to recover the town costs for providing those services. Fines are the amounts of penalties for town code violations. The last comprehensive fee study was conducted in 2010. Since then, certain fees were increased annually based on the Consumer Price Index and building indexes by subsequent council actions. In December 2017, the town engaged revenue and cost specialist, an independent financial consultant firm to specialize in public fee analysis to prepare the comprehensive fee and cost allocation study. The result of the fees study can be found in attachment 3. In the audience, we have Eric Johnson and Chu Tai and from the firm, and they are available for question after staff presentation. Staff drafted a proposed fee schedule based on the result of the study, the California government codes, affordability, prior council actions, and parity to other jurisdiction. You can see the drafted fee schedule, Exhibit A to Attachment 1. In summary, staff recommends most of the fees at 100% recovery. Previously subsidized planning fees are proposed to increase by 15%. Nonprofit special event-related fees would be subsidized by 75%, and recommending establishing new fees such as a feral cat feeding permit and business license processing fees. By a council member request, an alternative schedule is included in attachment 6 for your consideration as option 2. This option shows most planning fees that were previously subsidized are recovered at least 75%. The comprehensive fine schedule proposed several code violation changes to discourage certain behaviors in town, as redlined in Exhibit A to Attachment 2. Several town departments conducted outreach to their prospective constituencies to inform them for the proposed fee changes. For example, a dozen service clubs and nonprofit participated in meeting to review the proposed changes related to special events. In conclusion, staff recommends that the Town Council adopt a resolution approving the comprehensive fee schedule for fiscal year 1920, either as presented in Exhibit A of Attachment 1 or as presented in Attachment 2. Staff also recommends that the Town Council adopt a resolution approving the comprehensive fine schedule for fiscal year 2019-20 as presented Exhibit A of Attachment 2. This concludes the presentation. Directors, other town staff members, and the consultants are available for your questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Ungari. We have questions for staff or the consultants or comments. Seeing none. Oh, Vice Mayor.
2 questions. The first one, I can't find it, but the appeals fees for planning appeals seemed low to me, and I was just wondering how that fee got set. Is that one that we did not do cost recovery on?
Some of the certain fees that previously was identified, for example, the Conceptual Development Advisor Committee fee, with the staff decided not to recover 100%, but the CDD director might add some additional information to that.
So I do know that CDAC is not being recovered, and that's fine. I'm just curious about fees for appeals.
Thank you for your question, Joel Paulson, Community Development Director. So staff looked back at the previous fee study as well, and so that wasn't cost recovery at that point. So staff's recommendation was going up the 15% pursuant to staff's recommendation and not being cost recovery. If the council's interested in increasing that, then staff is here to make that change.
Okay, thank you. One other question? Question regarding police fees for residential parking permits. It's only $42, and a guest pass is $10. I mean, if I get a ticket, it's more than that. So I'm assuming that is not cost recovery, and why did we make the decision to have those fees so low?
So I can just start to answer this question. At this time, we did not adjust any of the fee because we are waiting for the result of the parking study. So everything is just as status quo. But if the chief would like to add something.
I'm with Gita.
Okay. I'm assuming that if there is something in the parking study that indicates that we should be changing that's going to be brought back to us.
Yes, it's correct. We would bring it back.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple questions on administrative fees. This is just clarification for me. On administrative fees under the business license processing fee, it says out of town $20 and in town $40. That wasn't clear to me.
So the town has at least 4,000 businesses in town, or for at least issue business licenses for 4,000 businesses. And businesses that are located in town require more work than businesses, a contractor who comes in and has to pull a business license because of the building permit. So we have business license requirement, everyone who does business in town, and some of them located in town and some of them not located in town. So we call them out-of-town businesses.
Okay, and then, thank you. And then with regard to, this has just came up generally, I'm looking at development services, but it has come up in other areas also. And my objective would be to be clear to the people who use our services. And this one on development services, it says fully allocated rate as opposed to a number. So for those services where there aren't numbers and dollar signs, but it just says things like fully allocated, how would a person who's using our town services know what he, she, or it is going to pay?
So it's something that the town departments would work with that person to make an estimate, because it's really based on the actual hours that's involved in that process. And department has good estimates to give to the candidates on those cases.
So they would know before they start, whatever they're starting.
There can be a conversation and assumption.
Thank you.
All right. Any further questions at this time? Seeing none, we'll go to the public. I have no cards on this item, so if anybody wishes to speak, now is your chance. No one is coming forward, so we will close the public hearing and move back to council for discussion and motions. Vice Mayor.
I will make a motion that we adopt resolution approving the comprehensive fee schedule for FY 2019-20, and also the fine schedule that are attached in the original staff report, not the desk item, and noting on the motion that we would assume that based upon results of the parking study, that we will see those if changes are necessary to this fee and fine schedule.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Seeing no discussion, I will call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Moving on to item number 9. This is our school busing program. Ying Smith will be giving our staff report on this one.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thank you. So, as the Mayor mentioned, today we're here to present to you the school bus business plan. Most importantly, this is the opportunity for the Council to discuss the issue of interest to you and provide staff the direction on the future of this program. So this is just refresh people's memory, but bring us all to the same page. The goal of this program is to reduce traffic congestion near schools. So we list the key program elements under the direction of the Council. The service started on January 7th this year. Thanks to the community support and great work of our student transportation provider, the town has provided safe and high-quality transportation for 9 weeks. So the business plan provides very useful information for ongoing discussion of funding, staffing, and program size. By starting the discussion early, the town will have more opportunities to explore resources which will help us create a sustainable program in the long term. So those are the same topics highlighted in the business plan, which is the attachment 1. We highlight the key topics we're going to cover this evening. Of course, if you have interest, we are happy to go into details of others. So I would really like to start with the strength of this program. The service is well received by the parents and the students, and also well received by the community. Despite its small size, the service is effectively tapping into the previous unserved market of student transportation. So you're probably familiar with the number we have been gaining riders, the number of subscribers over time. We are now reached the same numbers in the previous sign-up time. So the buses, based on the number of subscribers, are near capacity. So one thing to caution is, though, the ridership, the actual students riding on a daily basis is like roughly less than 50% on average. So we don't have the full understanding of why it's such. We do provide 2 possible explanations in the business plan. So the first topic is the service scale in 5 years. As we provide to you the analysis in the business plan, to reach the 10% automobile trip reduction at the key intersections, we need to reach about 10% of the student population. That would require more than 500 students. So based on the numbers, the potential to grow this program can go up to 6 routes in 5 years. We put the scale up between 2 and 6 routes. So want to take a look at the numbers of how much it would cost. This is the same table as what you have in the staff report. We build in the cost increase based on the current contract with the student transportation provider. And we do want to note even the 2-route program at the current scale is still a very big expense on the town's budget. And in the business plan, staff did caution that the cost could potentially go even higher after the 5 years. So not only we look at the revenue side, we also review the cost side. We also review the revenue side. Do want to highlight the 3 revenue sources: fare, grants, as well as the town's own resources. For the current budget, we only include the fare revenue as well and the town's general fund reserve. The fare is based on the target subscriber number. We're currently at about 10%. In the next year, we potentially will go up to the 15%. We are basing the number at 60 subscribers per bus, which is a optimistic number, but it's achievable. Also in the table 5 in the business plan, we show the current year as well as what it takes if we want to set an ambitious goal of 30% fare box recovery. So basically, that would require annual increase of the fare increase of 30% starting year 3 to get to the 30% increase. So, sorry, we want to go back. The second revenue source is grants. So we do want to highlight the conclusion that there's a great risk of relying on grant funds. That is not a dedicated funding source. We understand the community as well as the council did talk about the Measure B funding. So even in the best case scenario, we're successful in getting grant funding in the innovative transit category. This is not a dedicated funding source. So do want to touch on the management challenges. The current program does put great financial as well as staffing burdens on the town. The challenge with the current management structure is that it's pulling resources away from other council priorities. So there's a trade-off we have to make. So that leads us to the next slide that will talk about some other options available. We do have detailed information on the 4 different options, and the table kind of highlight the pros and cons of those options. But until we have a funding partner, like other funding partners come on board, the town has the first 2, which is the current model, the town managed model, or outsource the management responsibilities to a consulting firm. If in the future we have other funding partners come on board, JPA, the Joint Power Authority, will become another option, which is the model that is used by traffic or Rinda school bus programs. That's the Danville-San Ramon model. So in summary, so far in this program, the concept of the pilot is to kind of prove whether this will work or not, whether we have this market. We have concluded that the service is well received by the community, and it is effective, even though it's a small scale. However, we do have a lot of challenges ahead of us, so which led staff to go back to kind of the original problem statement. So what is the problem we're trying to solve here? And are there other ways we can get to the same results? So here we do want to present to council 2 alternative models at a more conceptual level. We haven't gotten to the details yet, but we do want to share those ideas with you. So the first one is the VTA School Tripper. So this is not a new concept. VTA is providing this kind of service in many cities throughout the county at no cost to those agencies. So in this model, the town would partner with VTA to modify VTA's existing routes or one route or more than one to serve the schools that we need the congestion relief. So the second concept is a van pool incentive program. So conceptually, the town could provide subsidy or incentive for school trips that are taken on a van pool instead of on a family car. So again, we just want to flow those ideas with you and just hear your feedback. So this is the topic we mentioned before, that what are the performance standards and metrics to evaluate this program. The program is very complex, so there are many standards and you can choose. Staff is recommending using the number of subscribers as the primary performance standard. And we do propose a minimum is 48 subscribers per bus, and we do want to set a target of 60. So other metrics will allow the town to measure the program from different aspects. Then again, this is for the council to kind of suggest to us what else you would like us to look at. So in closing, we highlight some of the topics for your discussion. We are interested in hearing the council as well as the community's input and direction. And this concludes my presentation. Be happy to answer your questions.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Smith. Do we have questions for staff from council? None at this time. We'll open the public hearing. We have one card. Bob Buxton, please come forward. If anybody else wishes to speak, please fill out a card and bring it up.
Mayor, Council, thank you for having me here tonight. Bob Buxton, Robin Way. Thank you for my appointment to the Transportation and Parking Commission. I'm speaking to you tonight as its chair about the school busing. Probably duplicating some of the things that Ying Smith said, but the commission started back in 2016, maybe even before that. And at that time, it was referred to the TRAFICS program by some of you, or the Danville project, et cetera, et cetera. We established an ad hoc in March of 2017, 2 years ago. The ad hoc was in attendance at a meeting along with Director Morley and Thomas Cook, the president of Safe Routes to School. We spoke to the Transportation Division Manager of San Ramon. She was a part of the TRAFICS program from its inception. We had 2 hours plus with her, a lot of great information, and we've definitely come a long way since then. And taking us a long way since then, Ying Smith comes to town. We provided Ying a 3-ring binder with all this information in it from what we gathered as a commission. I swear she assimilated it in one day. And then we are where we are today with a very successful school busing program. I'm not sure our town has a school bus mentality yet, but it's coming. We appreciate your support, financial and otherwise, promoting the program. We're optimistic and continue our excitement. Nobody said this was going to be easy. Parents and the students, as Ying had mentioned, have embraced the program. We're at a level where it's taking 200 vehicles off the road every day. There's been some good stories. When I participated in the first day, January 7th, at the JCC, the kids, they're all just so polite. And one mom came up to me and said, you know, if it wasn't for this program, I wouldn't be able to have a full-time job. 2 other moms I'm speaking to after the kids got on the bus and took off, and I go, we don't know what we're going to do with all this extra time. Now, when I talk about the Chamber of Commerce in a little bit, I'll tell you what they're going to do with their extra time. We're concerned about the cost. I don't know if we want to call it cost, but I think we might want to call it an investment. It is a costly project. There's lots of other things going on in our town that we need to spend money on. What better place to promote safety, to support our kids, to support our families? The program will grow. And real quickly, let me tell you some of my ideas for it to grow. We need ridership.
Mr. Buxton, if you, we have questions for you. So, Vice Mayor.
Ridership and?
Ridership, so here, and not in any particular order, we need increased ridership. We need to continue our relationships with the home and school clubs. They've done a good job for us. We need to continue that. We need to engage the trustees, the administration. The Youth Commission has done a wonderful job. We have a youth commissioner, Commissioner Rue, and she's amazing. She keeps the older commissioners on task during our meetings, President Company excluded. So we might have a school bus at some of our events, probably Spring into Green. That's too little notice to that, but these buses, I mean, it's cool. They're cool. So I'm on that first day, I'm at Blossom Hill School, Cherry Blossom, and here's this beautiful painted white school bus parking only, and here are 3 SUVs, moms and grandmothers. And I've got a town vest on like I'm very important, and I started to have some nice conversations with these wonderful ladies, and I said, you might want to move because there's school buses coming. There's no school buses in this town, and here's a big placard and another sign. So I said, well, go repark, come out, and you can meet your kids and your grandchildren, and you can see one of these buses. So anyway, it's a cool story. But not everybody knew we had a school bus. Hang on.
Are there any other questions for Mr. Buxton? Vice Mayor?
I'm not sure that you're the right one to ask. It could be Ms. Smith. One of the things that concerned me in our report was the very low ridership of high school students. And since they're the ones that drive the cars and create most of the traffic, do you have any insight into why high school students aren't riding, and what participation is the high school having with Transportation Commission and Safe Routes to School to engage in getting high school students on the bus?
So the high school students don't have a school busing mentality yet.
That's true.
And we can change that mentality by continuing to promote. We need to engage parents, students, testimonials by each of those that have been participants. We can increase the ridership by the high school students. 2 sons of mine went to the high school. They walked, they rode their bikes, they carpooled. They very seldom drove their cars unless their grades justified it. But we can increase the high school ridership.
Any more questions for Mr. Buxton? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you. I had a couple other things, but it's good.
All right. So we will close the public hearing and move on to discussion and or motions. Councilmember Sayok.
Actually, I have questions. Is that okay?
Of course.
So Ms. Smith, if you could just, I'm on page 4. And so I appreciate the pros and cons. I like that matrix. If you can just walk me through the 2 alternate suggestions. So let's start with the transit agency and working with VTA. Given the NEXT network, and perhaps Councilmember Rennie could also share some insight, how realistic do you think VTA would be in changing a bus route to accommodate our high school, considering we have low ridership to begin with? Oh.
Okay, I will start, and I'm sure other people will have input. In terms of the logistics of changing a bus route, that can be done. That's not VTA does have really the best transit planners there. This can happen, and our buses are very full, and that's really our strength here. And granted, the current VTA routes are not highly productive, but by adding our students, that will make those routes more productive. So those are the strengths. In terms of whether that is a politically acceptable approach, I'm going to let Director Morley add to that.
Thank you, Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. So, yeah, I think there'd be a little bit of strategy in working with VTA to see if we can include it into a program along the way, and what kind of compromises we'd have to make in terms of funding allocations. As Ms. Smith mentioned, it could be a win-win by increasing the ridership on the VTA routes. And doing that through sort of the guaranteed student ridership. So there's an opportunity there. Whether it's something that will actually come to fruition, I think there's some work. If the council wants us to pursue that, we would do so. But we wanted to have it out there as a discussion point for you this evening.
Vice Mayor?
Following up on that, when the original surveying was done for the pilot program, was there any question asked about safety and security of the fact that it's a school bus versus putting my child on a public bus with a public route? And I was wondering what the survey results of that were, because if there was a concern, we may not get that ridership.
Yes, that's a very valid point. We did actually approach this question in two different occasions. First one was a design charrette that was more like a really engagement with the community, with the potential customers. And the second one is in the second survey. There was a lot of concerns from parents, especially parents with younger children, that they are not so comfortable of having their children on a public transit bus. So further in the survey, we use a more like a kind of qualitative question, and all the information help get us to this point to say really our community is ready for a yellow school bus model, not a public transit model.
Mr. Rennie?
Thank you. I can't get my mic too close. I don't know what's going on there. Let me just add a little bit of perspective. So I'm on the VTA board, and we are trying to fill a $20 million operating budget hole. So, we've already started, Director Morley and I from our different directions have started discussion about this, this idea of kind of taking it over for us. I would say it's a long shot to get VTA to spend any more money towards it. I can imagine them adjusting their route so that you have one route and maybe the times so they come down to the certain schools, but we're talking about wanting to get up to 6 so we can get students from all over the place. I have a very hard time imagining VTA is going to add six buses or snake a bus all through that or something like that. So Director Morley's committed to keep talking to him, and so am I, but I think it's a bit of a long shot that this is going to be, we'd be able to go the VTA direction with this.
Councilmember Sayoc.
So thank you for all that insight. My next question, and it's similar to Vice Mayor Jensen's question about the survey. So if we were to look at the Vanpool option, it's not a yellow school bus, but do you think any of the concerns about safety would spill over into a Vanpool that doesn't look like a school bus? Or was it just the public aspect?
We didn't actually test this idea with the potential customers yet. This is really probably the first opportunity to share with you.
And a follow-up. And with the JPA, do you have some insights you can share of how Danville, how that financing structure worked? Because you would be sharing costs, but who do you share the costs with?
So if we use Danville as an example, that's very, very different. They are getting dedicated funding from the sales, for the county sales tax. So in addition to that, all the cities within that area, they all are financial partners, plus the school district.
I will call on myself. This weekend when I was driving up off of Summit Road, I saw Loma Prieta School District. Had a lot of buses sitting out there in the yard. And I thought of this idea, has staff considered potentially partnering with a neighboring school district such as a Loma Prieta or a Campbell Union School District if they have any excess capacity to perhaps bring the cost structure down?
Yes, thank you for that question. Last year, when staff was preparing the feasibility study, we did actually approach both Campbell as well as Loma Prieta school districts. So both school districts are really running the buses to the maximum capacity. They don't have any additional bus. During the same time, we need the buses. So in terms of the access capacity, that is not available. We did further talk to the Loma Prieta school district whether because they do have some seats available, not too many, like about 10 or so, but they do have an eligibility requirement. The passengers have to live within the school district. So for that reason, there will be something, they ask us to release liability, which is a very confusing concept because our model is very, very different.
Thank you. Any other questions for staff or a motion on this item? Vice Mayor.
A procedural question. Are we being asked to accept, I guess that's the term, of the report as one item and then provide direction as another item? Is that correct?
For this kind of report, you don't need to formally accept the business plan. We wanted to make it available so you would have the in-depth thinking and data behind it. But what we're really looking for is direction on the 5 questions on page 5 of your staff report as outlined by Ms. Yang.
Okay.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question of staff. Does staff have a recommendation? I.e., is staff recommending that we continue on with the current plan till the end of the year? This may have been in your staff report. So any recommendation from staff side?
If I could jump in quickly. So we are planning and are moving forward with running the program through the next school year. So we had done an 18-month pilot. So we're definitely headed in that direction. We wanted to take the opportunity while we had a little bit of a sort of a pause in between signups and getting ready for the next year's worth of signups to bring a status report to the council, let you know how it's going, the positives, the high level of interest, and the negatives, the cost and the low ridership, and talk about some of those things. Doesn't mean we're not going to continue to work on those and to improve those. And Ying's been an amazing champion for the program in the community. So that's all work that will continue. But we did want to start thinking about the future and what the future looks like, and to identify if the council had any particular direction that they were interested in us starting to explore a little bit. This isn't the last chance at it. We'll be bringing this back to you again for actual decisions, at least in the future, if not future updates at the council's request.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. Well, within those parameters, I continue to think the school bus is a great idea. I like the traffic benefit, the environmental benefit. It's a little disappointing that not more people are using it, and that even those people who have signed up don't use it about half the time. I wish it was a more robust usage. On the other hand, it has just started, and I get that also. With regard, I thought the VTA concept was an interesting one, but I hear from our council members and our staff that it might not be realistic, but let's put reality aside. If I put reality aside, the VTA concept is a definite possibility. With regard to the van pool, because of the cost, I don't see that as a realistic path for us. And the other thing, looking at other communities and their use of sales tax, that might be something, since we have a new sales tax, that we might want to consider.
Vice Mayor.
Okay, along the same lines, since we're not doing a motion, going through the, thank you very much for the report. Really appreciate it. It's very interesting. What does the council envision? Well, hopefully bigger, but not at a prohibitive price. So I think that we're going to have to do some work in trying to figure out routes that are going to be attractive. I think that why those metrics that you signed up but you didn't ride, it's because mom or dad can't get you to the school bus it's inconvenient, or your schedule with your soccer game or your whatever it is not allowing you to get there on those times. Just based on my experience, what happened about scheduling in school. So it's kind of interesting. I would want to get more survey input. Why aren't you doing it? What's inconvenient about it? What would you be willing to pay for that? So number 2, that's the fare structure. I think we ought to be looking at increasing it. I think that people can afford to pay it. They have to understand that there's a value and that it's convenient to them, and that value ought to be compared against time spent in your car, annoyance in your car, cost of your car, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. That's an educational matter, but we ought to be trying to scale up our fares. Organization structure, that depends on where we go in the future. I know that Ms. Smith, you can't be running a bus program and doing everything else we want you to do. So thank you for doing it so far, but obviously that's going to have to change at some point. The VTA option, because of the survey results and because of just kind of my personal experience with parents, is I don't see that as a viable option with younger children, because I don't think the parents will put their kid on that bus. I think it is a viable option for the high school, and I think that the high school, I would hope we could engage them more, because that seems like a stop that the VTA could make, and if you're older, you might be able to ride that bus if it made sense. But I don't see giving over this program to VTA. I don't think it is a viable option. I think the metrics are good, but I look forward to new survey results. Why are you writing it? Why aren't you? And along with Councilwoman Spector, I think we should be looking for financing options, and if we have any funds available from our new sales tax, that might be a good thing. And if we ever get our PCI to a point where we can use discretionary Measure V funds, that might be another funding option.
Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll add my thoughts also. So we are still very early in this. We're only 3 months in, and even in this 3 months, the initial sign-up was disappointing, and as parents saw other parents using it, we actually our sign-ups have been increasing, and I think that as more people learn about it and they see the convenience to the parents, I'm hoping that more people will start using it. So I think of this as, let's demonstrate that people, we can get lots of people to ride that, and it's obviously going to take time. Is the startup period 2 years or 3 years to really prove that? I agree that we will want to start testing, pushing fares, but I don't think we want to test that too early. We want to first demonstrate that, yes, people do want to ride this, and let's not put variables in that might discourage them, but we're going to have to look at that in the future. And I'm hopeful that once people see how convenient it is, this survey result that said they won't pay more than $750 a year is maybe not true once they see, well, it really is worth more than that, but we need to prove that first before we scare them off. On the VTA model, I think that maybe we can get VTA we could try to take over the management of it, but not necessarily run their buses. What if we continue to use this service that's only for children, so they aren't scared off from a VTA bus, but VTA takes over the management of it, so that frees up our staff for some of the other priorities. And maybe there's some kind of hybrid model also. We get them to adjust the new 22 bus to align with the highest high school ridership, arriving at the right times at the high school kind of thing. So maybe there's some hybrids in there we can do, but with VTA, I'm having trouble of envisioning turning the whole thing over to them. I mean, we had a community bus that we started a few years ago. I don't know what it was, 8 years ago or 6 years ago, and that kind of ran as a community bus, and the concept was it was a community bus so people would ride it. Well, they got rid of it and just put a regular VTA bus, so it lost that community feel that I want to ride a community bus. And I worry the same thing. You turn this over to VTA, and then it eventually morphs into their regular routes, which then become too expensive, and they get rid of it. So we want to be careful what direction we want to go there.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you. Following up on other council members, one additional thing is that it could be that by having the middle school students writing, now we're maybe having a pushback from the high school students, but those middle school students who are using it, since this is a brand new concept to us, they will then use it when they get to the high school. And this may be something that Mr. Buxton and company can be thinking about, and staff can be helping us with. But actually also the Youth Commission, to create a culture of using the bus. But there's probably a million reasons why high school students don't want to use it. But if they've used it as middle school students, they may be more likely to use it as high school students.
All right, so I'll just add my comments. I concur with most of what has been said among my fellow council members here. I think we need to give it a little more chance, and I think we need to try to help potentially market it a little bit, or at least get the word out. As Mr. Buxton said, let's see if we can get the high schoolers riding it. As Councilmember Spector just said, perhaps the middle schoolers, when they become high schoolers, they will be used to it by then. But it's going to take a little bit of time to develop and get it going. As far as the support for it financially in the future, I don't think we have to make that decision at this point in time. This is an 18-month program. I guess it's already funded for 18 months. So let's see what happens, and we can make a decision about that in the future. So at this point, that's it. No motion needed. All right. Thank you very much for your report, Ms. Smith. We'll move on to item number 10. We're going to discuss the Policy Committee's recommendations for commission appointments for Policy 2-11.
Yes, good evening, Council. I'll be giving the report. Before you tonight is the Policy Committee's recommendation for amendments to the Commission Appointments Policy and the Town Agenda Format and Rules Policy. At the February 26th meeting, the Policy Committee meeting, the committee discussed proposed modifications to these policies and provided the following recommendations. For committee applicant interviews, the Policy Committee recommended allowing a submission letter and remote participation for interview purposes only for the incumbents. And for remote participation by committee members, the Policy Committee did not have a consensus, but they did agree that they felt like an allowable number might be less than half could be acceptable, but wanted to open that up to council's input on whether to allow for that remote meeting participation by phone for committee members. They did not want to make any change for council or for planning commission. The Policy Committee also recommended some language that we needed regarding special meetings. There were certain times when general meetings were canceled and made into special meetings in order to allow there not be an absence. And so we've added language to the policy that would make certain that you can't just change a general meeting to a special meeting in order to alleviate absences. So with that, the town clerk is here for any other questions too you might have. But it's open primarily for discussion to talk about the remote participation.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Schultz. Are there any questions for staff at this time? Seeing none, we will move on to the public hearing. And I have no cards on this item, so we will close the public hearing and move back to council for discussion and or motions. Councilmember Sayoc.
Okay, so in general, I appreciate the evaluation that went into this. I do feel that we've lost some good commission members because they've been unable to participate in the interview. I understand the need to want to meet people in person, but for those incumbents, I see value in just providing an alternative option for them, so I like that. Telecommuting I think is a valid concept. I struggle with what the right number is, and so I'd love to hear from the other council members what that is, but I do think there's value in providing more flexibility for our advisory commissions in participating via remotely, considering many of our commission members have various other appointments and responsibilities that, and this is a volunteer area.
Thank you. Any other comments or discussion? Or a motion? I'll go ahead and make a motion that we go with the recommendation in the staff report to approve the policy committee's recommendations for the commission appointments policy policy 2-11. We have a second from Councilmember Sayoc. Any other discussion? Vice Mayor.
Just a question that your motion is not addressing remote participation. Did you intend to leave that as is in the current policy?
That's what my intention was, yes.
Okay, thank you.
That was the intention of the seconder as well.
It is, but I do have a question of staff. Given that there's no specific number, how would staff address?
Then it
this
falls
part?
back on the current language.
Okay.
It has to be an emergency. So
Okay.
we typically don't allow it under any circumstances.
And have we defined what emergencies are, like unexpected?
In the hospital or
Okay.
some other reasoning that you can articulate, but it's not just because you're out of town on business or you're out of town on vacation.
Okay. Okay.
Councilmember Spector, did you?
No, my question was answered. Thank you.
All right. We will call the question on this one. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Move on to item number 12, which is, I'm sorry, item number 11, which is, there is no 12, but there is 7. And this is the streamlining, modifying the duties of new conditional use permits. Ms. Wren.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Before you this evening is an opportunity to stream another business process. The recommendation is to allow group classes to occur by right with a certificate of use and occupancy and a business license outside of the C2 zone, and for those within the C2 zone to maintain their conditional use permit but have it approved at the DRC level. This, of course, is up to you if you'd like to kind of play with this a little bit, but this is the staff's recommendation is tonight. And we've brought this forward tonight to try to line it up with the other resolutions to make it streamlined and consistent for those businesses out there who want to come through in this trial period through the end of December of 2019. At this time, we do not anticipate bringing any other streamline items forward for policies for businesses unless the council prefers otherwise. So we see this as kind of wrapping up the questions that we typically have at the counter and from businesses to allow for the remainder of the year to provide some flexibility and see what it can do for our business mix. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Sayoc.
So just a procedural question. Is there some benefit to having it end on December 31st versus looking at a full year or 18 months? Is it just administratively easier?
What the anticipation of the staff was is to line it up with the other temporary resolutions so that the messaging can be consistent for property owners and for brokers. And then our thought is about the end of the summer, early fall, we'll come forward and kind of give you a report of what's taken place, what businesses have come forward, and then at that point take the temperature of the council to see if these are things we'd like to extend, perhaps make code amendments, or perhaps sunset at the end of the year.
And then in your opinion, if you were to do that in the fall and we're in March now, would that give you adequate time for this particular pilot to determine if this has helped?
It's difficult to say. I actually think we will see more changes take place outside of the downtown. The downtown, the property owners tend to have a pretty good idea of what the kind of mix is that they're looking for. Some of them aren't interested in group classes, but I think outside of downtown and some of the strip mall, or not strip, but like the shopping centers, there are some vacancies that sit there that this may provide a benefit for them, and I foresee that being the bigger change.
Thank you. Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. So when I hear group classes, the first thing I think of are athletic classes, but aren't there other group classes that might occur in the downtown zone that aren't athletic? What might those be?
Absolutely. So group classes are actually kind of tricky. As you saw in the staff report, it's not even a definition that we have in our code. It's something that we've morphed from the school definition because I think when the code was written, it wasn't something that maybe was known at the time. So aside from group classes, for example, the Bay Area Acting Studio, they had a CUP for classes. We saw Cucina Bambini. They would still need to get a CUP if they came through today because they have the alcohol piece, but they were one that would be a group class that's not athletic. It could be things such as painting, art, all kinds of crafts type items, anything where you're really coming together at specific times. And I think it really speaks to the difference between group classes and the schools, because when I think the code's intent for the school is really somebody who's coming to stay the whole day. So there's lots of traffic in the morning, lots of traffic at night. Whereas these group classes tend to provide synergy and stimulate the economy because they'll bring in, a group of people for an hour. And then those people sometimes tend to stay, socialize, shop. We often see retailers who group near specific types of group classes. So it often brings partner retailers or partner restaurants with them.
So if I could follow up. So a place like Petroglyph, do they have a CUP that allows group classes? And what about is it called Out of the Box or something where the bookstore used to be?
So they do not. They are one-on-one. So Petroglyph was here before the CUP for group classes, I think, was necessary, or there's some kind of odd retail there. And then when Craft Box came in, they were actually a retail use, and so they've kind of morphed into something a little bit different. But we would look at those. I personally would define those as experiential retail. You're coming in, you're buying a product, you're paying for the product in there. You can, especially with the Craft Box, you can take it home to finish it. There's not always a need to do it in there. So it's much like also we had Warhammer that came through. They were a formula retail that got approved where you could buy the product and take it home and do it, or you could do it there in the store if you needed assistance. So we're really looking at those as more of a retail experience.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions at this time? Seeing none, we will open the public hearing. And we have no cards, so we will close the public hearing and go back to council for a motion or discussion. We have Vice Mayor.
I would like to make a motion that we adopt a resolution related to business streamlining that allows DRC approval, whatever it says in staff report, and read the whole thing. New conditional use permits for group classes to the DRC in the C2 zone, and removes the need for a conditional use permit for group classes in other commercial zones outside of the C2 zone, otherwise known as downtown, until December 31, 2019, to bring it in line with our other programs.
Right, we have a motion. Councilmember Sayoc, we have a second. Any discussion? Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. Thank you. Now we will go back to item number 7 from our consent calendar, which was pulled by Councilmember Spector. Mr. Morley, do you have a report?
Thank you very much. So this item originated out of 2016 Measure B. As we're looking at projects and trying to get our projects listed on the upcoming list, and VTA budgets on a 2-year process with a 10-year look ahead. So to be included in that 10-year look ahead, you really need to have your projects funded in that first 2-year cycle to get it moving and get the momentum going. Our one big project in the highways program is the upgrade to our Highway 9 and Highway 17 interchange. And so we've been pushing hard to get that project listed. One of the things that has come up in the discussion since the time that Senator Bell was here visiting with us in the council has been the potential of doing some changes to Highway 17, including some efficiency changes to help the traffic flow through there, so there was less conflict through merges of traffic getting on the freeway and exiting the freeway and shifting over through the lanes. So with that, we asked VTA if it would be reasonable to expand the scope of our Highway 917 project to include an efficiency study or efficiency look at Highway 17, so to improve the flow of the traffic along that corridor. It seemed to be a reasonable request, and the big concern for us was we didn't want to make a big impact on what Los Gatos looks like as you drive into Los Gatos on the freeway on Highway 17. So views of the hills, trees, tree-lined freeway, that kind of a thing. So we were very clear with VTA that was important, and if that was going to be at risk, we weren't going to be as likely weren't going to be as interested in the project. Along with that, as the VTA was looking at whether the efficiency improvements would work on Highway 17 in terms of staying within the existing right-of-way, they took on looking to see if there was a potential for getting an additional southbound lane of travel as well as an auxiliary lane, and they think that all of that fits within the existing right-of-way on the freeway. So the question to the town was, is that something that the town council can support us looking forward at in terms of a preliminary design, and have still with the caveat that the town still has options to review it as it progresses. So we provided some very, very basic concept drawings for you through your packet and on the wall here at the council chambers to take a look at. These are simply a way of looking at space, so looking to see where the right-of-way is and if the lanes actually fit there. There's much work to be done in terms of a design. But assuming, so VTA wanted to get the council's commitment before moving forward on this. They're willing to assign $6 million worth of Measure B funds for the preliminary design, so there's an opportunity there to move this one forward from that perspective. Again, the council would have opportunities along the way to provide their input and to tell the VTA what they think of the projects as they're coming forward through that design process. So a big stop at the end of the design. And with that, that concludes my report, and certainly here to support any questions from the council.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. Do we have questions for Mr. Morley at this time? We will go with the Vice Mayor and then Mr. Rennie.
A couple questions, if I might. The chart that's up on the wall and the one that we got in our desk item that is showing the potential auxiliary lanes, it's from Lark to Highway 9. That's what, half mile, quarter mile?
A good half mile, yes.
Half mile, okay. And the lanes, the schematic I'm looking at appears to eliminate the median planter.
That's correct. That's correct.
So for my money, in terms of changing what it looks like on 17, that is a fundamental change. My next question is, you said $6 million VTA is ready to go forward with. Is that only if we say okay, extra lanes, or is that connected to, in our staff report, page 2, quote, through the process to establish the structure of and projects included in the 2016 Measure B, the town proposed upgrades to the interchange at Highway 9 and Highway 17 as its major project in this category. So is the $6 million you're talking about also available for simply the interchange project?
I would expect the answer to that is no. The reason being that the interchange on itself doesn't stand hold well in competition with other projects in the region that are regionally significant, whereas including the efficiencies on 17 might change that conversation. Certainly doesn't mean that we wouldn't continue to push for that as we always do, but my impression is that it's not as likely to move forward.
And so what other projects are in competition that VTA thinks it's not adequate to simply improve the exchange? Why does VTA believe that more lanes is the only thing that they would support?
So I don't know the reason why what their reason is. I know that the highways program is oversubscribed, so there's $750 million allocated to the highways program over 30 years, and there's at least $1.25 billion of projects that are listed in it. So there's plenty of options in there for VTA to choose from. I think they'd be looking for a project that may be a little bit more ready to move forward at this point in terms of scope and design and regional impact.
One final question. So a project with more lanes and versus a project with interchange, based upon what you just said, both of them are about as equally possible to succeed, given VTA. I mean, if I add lanes, I'm not suddenly going to get a project. I'm still competing against those other projects that VTA is believing have more efficiencies.
Based on my conversations with the VTA, I would expect that if we were to approve the action that's recommended tonight, that they would include $6 million in preliminary design, environmental review for the project in their 2-year budget for the highways program.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Rennie?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you answered part of my question. Was really trying to understand what was going to change. So we'd lose the oleanders in the median instead, and we'd have kind of a concrete barrier like we see probably the rest of the way up 17 into the mountains. And then I think you're saying we're not going to lose any trees on the side because we're staying in the right-of-way, but somewhere in the staff report you also said if any trees are lost, they'll be replanted. So there's a little bit of a contradiction there. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so VTA was wanted me. So there's a history with looking at improvements at the Highway 917 interchange, specifically around metering lights. And VTA pulled back on doing metering lights there because there was some risk to trees when they were looking at a project there. And they realized that the pushback was probably going to make the project not likely. So they wanted to make it sure that it was clear that they understand the value of the trees and that that any trees that are needed to be removed with this, likely because of the interchange improvements more than anything, would be planted back on a one-for-one basis. And you can see, I think, if you look at the interchange, that there's additional landscape area that is included as some of the on-ramps are decommissioned that would allow for additional planting. So that was my intent, my understanding of their intent with that. Again, this is conceptual, so understanding what the actual plan does to trees or the median island is very hypothetical at this point, which is why it'd be necessary to have a real good stop at after design to make sure that the town had the opportunity to take a look at it.
If I could just follow up. So two questions sort of related to that. So what you're saying is we might lose trees as we play with the interchange versus driving up to the interchange where most of the lane is. And then the second part of it, the design looks like we're getting rid of the clover leaves and we're kind of coming in with probably a left turn and a right turn lane instead of having two clover leaves. The first thing I do when I look at that, I say, well, that must make Route 9 safer for us because you've got less highway crossings if, like, you're on a bicycle or a pedestrian. Is that one of the reasons for doing that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the focus on Highway 9 is to make sure that it's safe for all users. So this would allow the extra space that we don't have now in both directions. It would, again, early to really be sure of the design, but it would likely include signalized intersections to allow traffic to move a little bit more freely through there in a controlled way, and to allow bikes and peds some safe passage.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I pulled this from the consent calendar, I was mindful of the fact, in my mind, and it's consistent with what staff has said, that there really are two issues here. One is going forward with the Highway 9, Highway 17 interface, and the other one was the newer concept of this design change between Lark Avenue and Highway 9. I pulled it because of the latter. And the reason for that is, as staff has pointed out, our current general plan is very specific and defined about not increasing the lanes and keeping the median on Highway 17 between Lark and Highway 9. I don't think it is fair or right to the fact that we currently have a general plan advisory committee working on the general plan. We're asking for community input right now, and to have this council, and I think the word is commit to this concept when the whole general plan is currently under review is wrong. And so I would be supportive of the Highway 9, Highway 17, but not for even at this point, conceptual plan for something that might be totally inconsistent with the general plan that our community is examining.
So we will go with Vice Mayor Jensen and then Mr. Rennie.
If Councilwoman Spector wants to make that into a motion, I would second it. Pardon me?
A little early for that.
Oh, we have a comment? No, there's no cards.
Mr. Rennie.
So I did want to ask a question related to that. So Councilmember Spector said that the general plan says we won't touch the median on 17. I didn't recall that. I recalled the general plan saying we wouldn't widen 17 because it affects the quality of life in Los Gatos. Did it also say we don't want to lose the median?
There were a number of provisions in the general plan. I don't recall if the median was one of them or not. We could take a quick look, but
Okay.
it was definitely quoted in the staff memo as the main traffic transportation goal was not adding lanes on Highway 17.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, we will invite Mr. Jim Lord forward. You are the only card we have on this item so far.
Thank you. My name's Jim Lord. I've lived in Los Gatos for 25 some years. I live over by Lenardi's, and I'm a civil engineer, and I've been somewhat frustrated by the town's lack of action on really the widening of 17, because as the whole valley has grown, people want to get away from the valley on the weekends. They leave, they clog up 17, they back up, they fill all of Los Gatos, and those that live in my area, one, we can't get downtown. The people that live downtown, which I think is most of the council members, you can leave, but you can't come back. And when I hear about the median and the oleanders, I am not enthused about it. Most of the places, oleanders are gone. I doubt if 20% of the plant life that's growing in the median is oleanders. I think it's scrub brush and some sumac and other stuff. But my thought is the way VTA has always approached it and the way all the traffic people have approached it, the only way we're going to improve traffic in Los Gatos is to move the stacking further down so people don't get off at Lark. They don't, basically they don't get off at Lark or before and try to get on at Highway 9 or the entrance at the end of the road. So we need to address that. We just can't stick our head in the sand and say, we don't want to do anything. We need to fix the traffic problem and move it to somewhere else so that it's not in Los Gatos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lord. Guess we have Maria Risto. Please come forward.
Hi, Maria Risto, 85 Broadway. I think the overall project is compelling, but I do appreciate that members of the council recognize that we are in the middle of talking about a rewrite of the general plan. And as much as many people might want to see this go forward, I would hate to see the process that we've opened up to the community be circumvented, where we step around and make a decision, because maybe most people will want 17 widened. Maybe most people will say, we don't care about the median. Maybe that'll get changed in the general plan rewrite. But until that happens, I don't think it's a good idea to do that tonight. So I appreciate that this item was pulled. In terms of the interchange at Highway 9 and 17, one of the things, I just saw this the other day and I studied it quite a bit. There actually are no left turns. I mean, this is a really, really nice setup. It's all right turns, and everything is aligned on a right angle. So the ramps are coming up, and a driver will have a right angle look to see if traffic or pedestrians or bikes are coming. And this is the kind of change that's happened in interchanges on El Monte in Los Altos and in a variety of other places. So I do appreciate that this kind of change will occur. Right now, it's incredibly challenging just for cars to do that little weave in and out while cars are getting on and off in a short space. It's really impossible for a cyclist to navigate that area, and it's very unpleasant for pedestrians. So independent of whether we look at the widening of 17, I'm really encouraged that such a very good, I realize this is kind of a high scale drawing, but it appears that you would come out and turn right to get on, you're getting on to the right. It's all right turns, but it's all at right angles so that you have a good view as a driver. So I do appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry if you want.
Well, that's our last speaker card, so we'll close the public hearing and we'll go to Mr. Morley.
If I could clarify on the General Plan 2020. So our goal TRA-4 talks about highway ensuring that future changes to Highway 17 do not negatively impact the quality of life or small town character of Los Gatos. TRA under that policy 4.1 is as quoted in the staff report. There is no direct reference to the median islands, only a couple of references to not adding freeway lanes or interchanges.
Thank you. I have several questions for you. There obviously is some concerns about the process and the general plan and those things. However, we have a deadline. If we don't potentially vote yes on what's recommended in the staff report, we could lose our opportunity. And it's not just the opportunity of a potential widening, it's the opportunity of fixing the ramps, which has been something that we've been hoping for a long time. So I guess, suppose the council decided to adopt the resolution this evening as written in the staff report. It doesn't necessarily mean that ultimately we have to widen 17 and we have to fix the ramps, but it basically commits us to a process of obtaining funds so we can do a study so maybe the greater public can get involved and get engaged. And then if you can comment on the general plan theory, because this is something that if we wait for the general plan committee, then we miss the whole opportunity. In 20 years from now, we're going to be kicking ourselves more. That's the way I see it. So can you elaborate on this process?
Yeah, I think your points are well made. We have an opportunity now, certainly, to move a larger project forward. I doubt that a smaller project with the interchange only would be entertained at this point for the 2-year or 10-year look ahead. So we'd be continuing to lobby VTA to get included in that, and so we'd have to be really diligent at that. Whether we'd be successful or not, I think our odds probably decrease over where they are with this plan in place. But I acknowledge obviously that it's a significant step with the general plan language as it is today, which is why we're recommending a general plan amendment to go along with this to address that issue specifically. But certainly something that we wanted the council to provide direction on because it is such a major step. If you want to take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of you.
So, if we decide to take advantage of the opportunity, we keep the conversation going, and then if for some reason the general plan is not amended, right, so be it. But if we don't take advantage of the opportunity now, we don't even get to have the conversation.
Yeah, our commitment to VTA was we'd be making this commitment in good faith effort of if there's a viable project that meets the town's needs, that we would be supportive of a project in the end. But certainly the town would reserve the right to provide input through the entire process on the magnitude of the project, the impacts of the project, and the scale of the project as it's developed through the design process. It's not something where the VTA would come back to us with a design and say, here it is. It's something that would be iterative over the next several years as we work with VTA in making the decisions, bringing it back through council for input along the way, that kind of a thing.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and make the motion that we move forward.
Question.
Okay. Well, let me make the motion first, and then we'll...
Then I'll ask my question.
Okay. That we move forward with the recommendation in the staff report. Councilmember Sayak?
I know there's a question, but I will support the motion. And I just want to speak real quick to the general plan process. I understand it's underway, and I appreciate not limiting the scope of that discussion. But I also appreciate that for the past 2 years, we've been very vocal in our requests to VTA, to Senator Bell, and to many others to give us options to alleviate the traffic that is inundating our town. I feel like here's a valuable resource that's been given to us. And so, given both of the discussions that are ongoing, I feel like we shouldn't close this door, and the ability to tap into these funds. So definitely, in my opinion, I agree with Director Morley. It enhances it if it's a larger project that we can point to has regional benefits. So for that reason, I'll support the motion.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question of staff. One of the things that you said was that you would be going forward with a general plan amendment. What would happen to this process as you envision it should the general plan amendment not be enacted?
So I would suspect that I suspect that the project would stop at that point. I don't imagine that VTA would want to invest funds on a project that where a general plan is specifically stands against that project. So that would be a challenge for the project design.
But the project design, assuming that it goes forward, it would be going forward for some amount of time, and then at some undefined time in that time frame, the general plan may or may not be amended. So you or VTA would not know when this would all happen. Is that correct?
Yeah, we would expect that a general plan amendment for the 2020 general plan would come forward if the staff recommendation is what moves forward. That the 2020 general plan amendment would come forward in short order.
Going through the general plan committee, the planning commission, and the council, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I will not be supporting the motion, but not because of whether or not at this point 17 should be expanded between Lark and Highway 9, but because it is, and I agree that issue has certainly been aggravated by the traffic in the last few summers. You might live in the north part of Los Gatos and not be able to come downtown. And if you're downtown, I'll tell you right now, you can't go anywhere else. So having said that, I still don't think that we should be thwarting the process that we are, even this week, trying to publicize and get the community involvement in.
Vice Mayor.
I also will not be supporting the motion for the reasons that Councilwoman Spector indicated, and for the fact that given that we are doing a general plan process and we are trying to get community involved, the fact that this was on consent might not have alerted people to the scope of what this is, which in my mind is quite huge and impactful. I'm not a traffic engineer, but I cannot believe that moving a merge for a quarter mile or a half mile, given beach traffic, is going to do anything except make that mess a half mile longer, and then encourage me to get off at Highway 9 instead of Lark and go through town to get to the freeway because I can't even get there. There's one of my favorite quotes, and I can't resist it, I got to say it. Lewis Mumford is a famous planner, and in 1955 he said, adding highway lanes to relieve traffic congestion is like loosening your belt to cure obesity. It's not something that necessarily works, it just puts more cars on the road. And I believe that if we take this action now off a pulled consent item without getting a full vetting from the public, that we're doing a disservice to the public in our general plan process. And if there's no guarantee that we're going to get any money if we commit to this, and committing to it doesn't give us an option to listen to what people have to say if we've already taken the vote to commit. I actually think we have to go through the process, figure out what we want to do, and figure out if this is even viable. And I do support the interchange. I've always supported the interchange. That's what we talked to Senator Bell about. That's what I understood I was supporting. I never understood I was supporting widening. and I don't think it's a good idea. And it doesn't solve the problems that people want to solve.
Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you, Mayor. So I'll weigh in on this. I think this is actually a critical vote at a critical time. We've been working to get momentum. We started with Senator Bell here. We've got momentum with people on the California Transit Commission. We've got momentum with VTA. They're asking us, staff brought this forward. You certainly can't blame staff. They brought this forward because staff is being asked, is the council really serious about this? Because they know the history in Los Gatos that we keep saying, no, we don't want to widen 17. No, we don't want to widen 17. For the last 2 years, we keep talking about, we've had a lot of discussions. Obviously, everybody's not in agreement that we do need to do something on 17. So if we were to vote this down now, you can forget about the momentum that we've built, because the message to all of those people will be this council does not want to widen 17. So in my opinion, this is really about letting them know what our opinions are. I think it's just an excuse to say that, we're going to go through this long general plan process. I think all of us have talked to a lot of people in town. I've talked to many people that want us to widen 17. I'm sure there's some that don't want us to. If we turn this into a real item, we probably could fill the entire chamber. Maybe it won't be 50-50, maybe it will be 50-50 on each side, and we'll still have to come up with what is our opinion of whether we should widen 17 or not. So this is really a question for the council members. What do we want to do? I don't think we need a process to go through all this process to find out that we're going to get a room full of people on both sides. So as I said, I think this is a critical time to send the message that, yes, we want to move forward with this. So I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Rennie. I will weigh in, too. I was the one who wanted to put this on the agenda. And, it's one of these situations where we almost missed an opportunity to even begin to become noticed. Los Gatos, as Mr. Morley said, we have to compete for funds. And the deadline in order to compete for these funds was approaching. If we didn't get it on tonight's agenda, we wouldn't have the opportunity to even have anything. And the public, I think, will have plenty of opportunity to weigh in later on this subject, as well as the General Plan Committee, as well as the Planning Commission, and et cetera, et cetera. So if there's no more comments or questions, I will just call the question. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
So the motion carries 3-2. And we will move on to our next item, which is council matters. Councilmember Sayoc.
Okay, the only thing I want to flag for council's review, Town Manager Pravetti had shared with the council the cities association's budget position, housing position, specifically on the bills that are moving forward that stem from the CASA Compact. There also is a request for any council members that would like to serve on the legislative committee to submit your application to the Select Committee of Cities Association. And if you could send that to either Andy Jordan or to Ms. Pravetti, and she'll be able to assist.
Councilmember Spector.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Since our last council meeting, the Finance Committee met and had a discussion of the Internal Services Fund, and we'll be sending a recommendation to the council. And then in addition, I had many meetings with members of the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Since our last regular scheduled meeting, I attended the Treatment Plan Advisory Committee, West Valley Sanitation District Board of Directors meeting, and the Finance Committee meeting, as well as I helped an Eagle Scout with his merit badge talking about government, and I was on Dutch television, filmed a segment for the teacher housing project. I'll send you all the link. Vice Mayor.
I have nothing to report.
Councilmember Rennie.
Thank you. Mine's very light also. Partially because I enjoyed skiing in Colorado for some of the time, but I did attend the Little League opening day with the mayor and Councilmember Sayoc, and I did a ribbon cutting at the Nantucket Loft and the Villa Gallery, which are in that building just north of where Soul Cycle is. That's it.
Thank you. Manager Matters.
Just a quick reminder that we are actively recruiting for our adult and youth commissions. If you know of people who are interested in volunteering, please let them know that the adult applications are due on April 5th and the youth applications are due on May 3rd. Thank you.
All right, thank you. This concludes our meeting, everybody. Thank you for your participation.